So for more on this, we're going to be joined via Zoom by Energy Expert Adil Nchabeleng. Adil, good afternoon. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon and thank you so much.
Let's look at what's happening, perhaps before we unpack it further. Obviously, the announcement of stage 4 and stage 6 until further notice. But we'd also been promised by the electricity minister that rolling blackouts will remain on the lowest stages. But, I mean, we're now ramped up to stage 6. What exactly should we attribute to this? Your thoughts?
Look, there's been a 2,000 megawatts increase in terms of, breakdowns on power plants. So as a result, it has now triggered the introduction of stage 6 again. There's over 16,300 megawatts of electricity shortage right now, which is currently breakdown units that are unscheduled. And then you have about 3,400 megawatts of electricity, of breakdowns that are currently, which is scheduled maintenance, under maintenance, and combined with that, you have another 16,000. So if you look at it, you already see that 20,000 megawatts is already out of the network. And what Eskom is left with currently with the demand of overall 33,000 megawatts, they are only left with about 27,000 megawatts to play around with in order to provide electricity. That is why we've had to go into stage 6 load shedding at this current moment.
I want to take this conversation forward, perhaps also link it to some of your thoughts that you'd penned and published, perhaps the way forward, renewable energy program of South Africa's investment to date. Help us understand what your thoughts are on the matter, whether the investment has improved the grid or perhaps disadvantaged Eskom's priority plans.
Look, the investment in renewables energy plan has actually disadvantaged South Africa, and this was actually stated by the Minister Mantashe last week when he was speaking at the BBC, council, I think it was a conference, where he said that, look, we overinvested and were very eager quickly to switch off coal power plants. As a result, we neglected the maintenance, we neglected the support, we neglected the refurbishment, as well as an upkeep of Eskom's current power fleet, which was something that we should have invested heavily into in order to do and make sure that we have base load power capacity. So, investing in renewables was a requirement by the World Bank when they gave South Africa the loan to actually build Modupi and Kusile power plants. And as a result, they said that invest in terms of transitioning and migrating away from the current coal fleet power stations into renewables energy. South Africa has reached already a target with regards to its renewables, implementation. There's over 7,700 megawatts of renewables that have already been purchased and Eskom is paying for. And as a result, that kind of an income and revenue that is shifted away from Eskom's power plants, which is coal-based power plants, and Eskom's own tariff is being eaten out by renewables, and Eskom does not have enough revenue to actually budget out for its own power plants. And that is what has been the problem right now as we are seeing it, coming out, that there isn't enough resources to make sure that the coal fleet and power stations are maintained and are brought back into line at a speedy stage.
So there's obviously the minimum emission standards that had come into effect that set the stringent standards for South Africa since 2018. And I wonder, in your opinion, because it's also in your article, whether South Africa should still be imposing such stringent measures to the extent that it threatens our energy security. We obviously also have to look at the short and long-term effects they are and the moral obligation as well. What are your thoughts?
Look, the short and long term of it is South Africa cannot move away from the current coal fleet power stations. So imposing on ourselves through the Department of Fishery and Forestry and Environmental Affairs does not help the South African case of electricity shortages. And I was glad that the president, when he went to the last Paris conference on climate funding, he highlighted the fact that we made a mistake as South Africa. President Ramaphosa said it very clearly that we were very too eager and we switched off coal very soon, not knowing that it's going to give us a problem because we don't have enough alternative resources that were supposed to substitute coal. So the result ended up in a situation where we found ourselves in this situation where, our current policy plan became a mess and we were not able to do what we needed to do. But if you were to look at it, minimum emission standards are supposed to help with the aspect of environmental, air and pollution quality. In the current power plants, they should have been given a sort of a space by which for the next 5 to 10 years, until South Africa has achieved its goals, this should not be stringent requirements that even enforces on shutting down power plants as a result, to say that units must not work because they are not meeting minimum emission standards. And that's one of the reasons why we're sitting with such a huge load of power plants that are out of schedule right now, because most of them are not passing the Department of Environmental Affairs' current minimum emission standards. And until they pass, they are not allowed to operate. So that's one of the other uncommunicated problems that has been coming across. But I think this is something that politicians, as well as the lawmakers and parliament, should take it up and say, listen, we have to now go beyond the country's requirements of electricity sovereignty and security. And we can't be self-imposing, because there's nobody saying you should shut down power stations because they're not meeting minimum emission standards. It's only the Department of Environmental Affairs. So this issue should be confronted, and a decision must be taken to say, like what Europe is doing. Germany is currently firing its coal power plants, and they said for the time being, until we have an alternative, we are not going to be able to switch off our power plants.
Adil, I need to wrap up this combo, but I want to look at the way forward, because you're an advocate of nuclear being the logical next step in terms of SA reaching its clean energy goals, which obviously has many questions. Perhaps can South Africa afford the associated costs, the debt incurred? What are the long-term impact to the fiscal implications of this as well? There's also, maladministration, overspends, and lots of questions about corruption. Help us just understand that as we conclude this conversation then.
Look, historically, nuclear performance in South Africa, in terms of the nuclear company, the Nexa company, as well as the Quebec power station, has been the best managed, has been the best performing in respect to its efficiencies, with regards to operations, with respect to its efficiency on how it was spending money. And currently, nuclear is the most cheapest cost in terms of electricity production. We're looking at about 20 cents, if I'm not mistaken, of nuclear kilowatt hour production currently. And, this is something that you can't replace. Nuclear beats all other energy sources, even including coal, with its efficiency in terms of cost. The historical, sort of narrative that was attached to nuclear with regards to corruption was something that was created and hyped by generally the NGOs that were interested in tarnishing. Yes, the issue of what we did as a mistake of not taking the opportunity to go with Russia on that nuclear build plan was a big mistake. Today, we would have been enjoying additional electricity coming out of nuclear for the last 10 years had we signed this agreement at the time with Russia, because it would have improved the economy. It would have ensured that we have additional electricity capacity, and we have an industrial build program that would have improved the GDP of South Africa. So with regards to the issues that were raised around nuclear, most of them were just a farce. There was no reality and truth in it. And today we are seeing it because we are in a load shedding capacity.
Adil, this is obviously a conversation starter that will warrant some response, but we'll have to leave it there for now. And thank you for your time with us on the SABC, for weighing in. Adil Nchabeleng is an energy expert. You're commenting on perhaps the announcement from Eskom now having ramped up load shedding to stage 4 and 6 until further notice in lieu of developments, loss of additional generating units. Perhaps also looking at energy alternatives for the future. Proud proponent and advocate rather for nuclear. We'll have to see where to from here. But thank you to Adil for weighing in on that conversation.